is really the second part, if you will, of a two-part series. First, last week, if you will, we look out the rearview mirror. We asked the question, what kind of year was 2001? We ask you to evaluate that year, and then at the end of that evaluation, we understand we've got basically two kinds of people. A, those that had a great year, and to you we say, good going, hang in there, congratulations. Go to Dairy Queen, do the 2-for-1 on the blizzards, knock yourself out, and have a blast. However, past performance is not a guarantee of future results, so because you had a good 2001 does not mean you'll have a good 2002. There's also a group of you that had either a neutral to a poor year. We want you to confess it, acknowledge it as wrong, and get over it. If you had a bad year, very important. This is really important. If you had a bad year, it's no one's fault but yours. It's not my fault. It's not the Taliban's fault. It's not God's fault. It's not your spouse's fault. It's your fault. I'm not saying circumstances don't change. I got that. Circumstances go like this. When I'm saying to you, if I'm grounded in this faith, that in the midst of this, there's a constancy to my life. Things are moving like this. I'm like this, maybe even growing, because I grow best in those trials. So that was last week. Here's what we come at this week. This week we come with what we've called a fresh approach to a new year. Subtitled, How to Make 2002 the Greatest Year of Your Life. To do this, we're going to ask you to strive to develop in your life a characteristic that is rarely thought of in the context of the Christian faith. We're going to ask you in 2002 to be ambitious. Now, oftentimes when you hear that word, it has a negative connotation to you. There was a gentleman by the name of Shrader. Again, I presume that's not a pen name. I can't imagine anybody saying, call me Shrader. I'm going to guess that's his name. He wrote a book called Ambitious Men, Their Drives, Dreams, and Delusions. And the point of this book, it was a New York Times bestseller, the point of this book was to talk about ambition, to try to understand what was ambition, at least as we looked at it, and what effect did it have on people. So here's what Blotnick says in the beginning of that book. He said, there's one thing that's changed, and that is that people look on ambition more favorably now than at any time in the last 25 years. In fact, men and women see themselves as somewhat defective if they can't comfortably claim to be ambitious. Here's what Blotnick's saying. Across the board, there is within the nation this sense that says ambition is good. Now that brings to mind the obvious question, what is ambition? Well, rather than Shelley define this himself, what he decided to do was this. What he decided to do was put together little vignettes, to videotape them and then to show them to a lot of different groups of people and to ask them to identify what they saw in these vignettes that demonstrated ambition. As they did this, they found 5 dominant themes that provide the definition for the normal approach to ambition. Here's the first one. There was a desire for more. Somebody to be considered ambitious only if they had a desire for more, and then they defined what it was. More money, fame, prestige, and power. If somebody said they wanted to have a happier life, that is an evidence of ambition. Here's the second thing, and it's kind of a logical extension of the first, and that is an emphasis on quantity. Again, let me just report to you what Blotnick discovered. In judging whether someone was ambitious, the public doesn't care about quality, they only care about how much. In monitoring audience reaction, ambition was a quantitatively oriented word. It was irrelevant to them that the person was having a good time or a bad time. All they focused on was how much somebody was accumulating. So as they watched these films, if you weren't out there trying to get more and more and more and more and more, and if you gave the slightest indication that maybe you were enjoying yourself, now they grade you down on ambition. Here was the third thing, shortage of time. What Blotnick says is the people weren't inclined to give you forever to accomplish this. In fact, what he says was they had to have the big 4, money, fame, prestige, and power, today or no later than 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm late for a very important date. I'm in a hurry. Everything's going around. A lot of people live that way. Now, I want to add one more ingredient to the recipe. They said there had to be an absence of satisfaction. Listen to this. Fourth, the quest had to be open-ended. Someone who said, once I make $1 million, I'll never work again, just lie in a hammock and smile, was considered more goal-oriented than ambitious. If the word were to truly apply, they felt that the person had to be willing to strive virtually till the day they died. So here's what we're saying. People see ambition as good. If you're really ambitious, you strive till the day you die. So what I get in my mind is the picture. Here's the picture, the definition of ambition. It's that salesperson right up to the end. Right at the end. The most ambitious thing you can do is at the end of your life, as you're dying, you're cold calling. You're just still knocking on the door. It's just me. I may not be able to help you, but somebody from the office, they can. Now I'm done. I'm dead. But he's ambitious. He was an ambitious man. That's what they'd say at the funeral. He was an ambitious man. Right up to the very end, he was ambitious. Now, here's the fifth thing, and I want to come back and I want to hit the pause button and show you something. It was an obsession with self. Here's what they said. The person had to seem somewhat ruthless to the extent that he was concerned about other people's feelings. To that degree, they downgraded the level of ambition they saw him as having. Unless he gave the appearance of being out for himself, many were reluctant to use the word. Now, this is what the world says is a positive set of personality traits for you to have. When you're tomorrow sitting in your car on the freeway, going nowhere, look to your left, look to your right, look in the rearview mirror, look out in front, and you're not going to see anybody in there smiling. Here's why. To them, this is real life. A desire for more, an emphasis on quantity, a shortage of time, an absence of satisfaction, obsession with yourself. This is no way to live. This is what the world says is really living. See, this is why you watch people and they've got more stuff than you ever thought you would need, more stuff than you ever thought anybody would need, and they're still miserable. Maybe that's you. I remember one time, this guy said, will you help us move? Now, just in case you are thinking about moving and calling me, I don't do this anymore. I'm an old man. I now have people that move, so that's a good thing, see? And he said, will you help us move? And I said, yeah, so we're all done. We're sitting around. We're having a Diet Coke and a pizza, and we're talking. And the wife is in there, and she said, this is so good. This is so exciting. This is everything we ever dreamed of. Oh, we can live here forever. That's what she said. 18 months later, they're moving. And they're not downsizing. They're moving on up. What happened? It was everything I ever needed. I'll tell you why. There's something missing. A lot of guys, here's what they do. To justify their own goofy behavior and their obsession with work and their own greed materialism, here's what they'll say to the wife. Honey, I just do this for you. This is for you and the kids. You really want this. I'm doing it for you. You lying little pig. You're doing it for yourself. It's all about you. That's what it's all about. When you live this way, I'm just telling you, you're going to be miserable. Can't just look at that. Get more, never enough. No sense of satisfaction. Looking out for yourself. So when we say to you, be ambitious, we obviously aren't talking about striving for these things. We're saying to you, here's how we would say it, for example. We would say, be content in the material things, but there's a quiet, godly discontent in spiritual things. There's a point, it's not apathy, it's not complacency. There's just a point where I say, you know what? That's enough of this stuff. That's enough of the temporal. Now I'm going to look to the eternal. And there's always a discontent there because you're not made to be content spiritually here. There's always a hunger. There's always a desire for more, and it will never be satisfied till that moment where you step into heaven. That's when you'll be satisfied because that's what you're created for. I'll tell you an odd thing. Boy, we were way off the track here, but let me give it. An odd thing is this. As you tend to let go of the temporal and focus on the eternal, one of two things or both tend to happen. Either one, your desire for the temporal starts to fade away, or two, God in kind of a weird sort of way gives you all the temporal things you need. Incredible thing. Well, when we tell you to be ambitious, we're not talking about this normal approach to ambition. Let me give you a fresh approach to ambition. 5 things for this year. Number 1, an improvement in human relationships. The Apostle Paul in 2 Timothy writes this, Paul, an apostle of Christ Jesus by the will of God, to Timothy, my dear son. Now I, for 20 years since I've been a Christian, have had a sense that Paul needs a public relations firm and a public relations makeover. He's always portrayed as kind of this dogmatic, doctrinal, dry guy. Cut and slice, no humanity, no emotion. I just want you to read this just freshly. Or just read this with the eyes of somebody who's embracing this for the first time. To Timothy, my dear son, this isn't his biological son. This is his spiritual son. There's a relationship, a kinship there. I found a letter the other day that Larry had written me, and he addressed it to my beloved son, from your proud father. That's what we're talking about here. And then he has a wish. He said, here's what I wish for you, Timothy. Grace and mercy and peace. What a great thing to wish. Years ago, I was sitting in my cube, and one of the girls in the office was getting married. So we're doing this thing where you can see it coming, where you got to sign the card. It's coming all the way. And I'm watching it. We're just dreading this. I'm thinking, oh man, can I go somewhere? Is there anything? Because you got to write something, and you try to write something not stupid, something pithy. Try to find something to say, and I'm thinking, what am I going to say? What can I possibly do? You can just word Tom. That doesn't work. So I thought, well, I'll get the card and see what else somebody's written, and maybe I can either knock it off or write bigger, and they'll see mine first and think they copied from me. I don't know. I hate that. So I get it, and I'm going through to see what everybody else has written, and the guy ahead of me, actually it was a girl, woman, lady, I don't even know what to call anybody anymore, wrote, I wish you all the world has to offer. And I thought, there's a wish. Suffering, pestilence, hardship, curse. Wish you all these things and more. The plague, smallpox. I wish it all to you. And I thought of this verse. Here's what Paul wishes. Grace and mercy and peace. Here's what I want you to have, Timothy. More than anything else. Grace, unmerited favor. Mercy. God's not going to give you justice. He's going to give you not what you deserve, but what you don't deserve, and peace. So that's what that world's desire, and they just want a sense of satisfaction. It comes from God, from Jesus Christ. I thank God, whom I serve as my forefathers did with a clear conscience, as I constantly remember you in my prayers, recalling I long to see you. Recalling your tears, long to see you that I may be filled with joy. He's thinking back at a time that Luke records in Acts chapter 20 of when Paul's saying goodbye to the elders at Ephesus. And there were great tears there as Paul said goodbye to these men. And he evidently knows something else about Timothy. He said, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother and then in your mother and now is in you. Now, we don't have the specifics, but the question that would leap off that page to me would be, where are the men? Where's Grandpa and where's Dad? We don't know, but they're not there. My point is, Paul knows this man, and he knows him well. You're going to have a great year if you can improve relationships. You desperately need other people around you. Here's a very simple, you need friends. Now, I have a basic rule of thumb, and it's this. Men, your best friends need to be other men. Women, your best friends need to be other women. I imagine it's possible, though I doubt it, that a man and a woman could have a normal relationship that somehow wasn't muddled up with other male-female things. When I hear a lady say, oh, there's a guy in the office, and he's my best friend, I want to say, come here, sweetie, let me tell you something, okay? When he looks into your eyes and says, I want to tell you something. I can't really share this with anything. If I told the guys this, they'd laugh at me even. And I'm just so comfortable with you, and you're just a great listener. And I just can't be honest with everybody like I can be with you. Oh, brother, don't buy it. I'm going, no, girls, no, don't listen to this guy. Come into my web, you little thing. That's what's going on. You get that? There are no sensitive guys. They don't make them that way. Huh? And I'll tell you something, if there were, you wouldn't want them. Yeah? You need friends. Now let me give you a little exercise. I had a guy, he's a high-profile business guy, and he came to me one day and he said, will you be my friend? I need a friend, will you be my friend? And I said, no, I don't have time. I don't have time to be your friend. I got all my friend dance cards all filled. Friendship, real friendship takes time. I can't be your friend. And he said, I got to find some friends. And I said, I would agree with that. I said, here's the exercise. You go home, next week we'll meet. Give me one more meeting. Next week we'll meet, and you have on there a list of things that you're looking for in a friend. Just list them out. So we came in the next week, and we talked about all the normal stuff, and then I said, you got your list? He said, yep. And I said, well, get it out. So I get it out. I said, read your list. And he had all the things on there, that you would put on the list. I said, now let me ask you to do something. Do those things describe you? He said, well, I'm looking for a friend. I said, whoa, stop. So's everybody else. And if these are the things you think are important in a friend, then I guarantee you this is what other people are looking for in a friend. And if you're these things, you will just attract people. I'll tell you one of the things nobody's looking for, and that's criticism, constant negative. Some of you are committed to the principle that every silver lining has a cloud, and it's your job to find it and then share it with everybody else. You have no friends, I'll tell you why. You're a load. You're hard to be around. You're argumentative. And you're one of those people, you know what? I can't help it. I just tell things the way they are. Okay? That's why you're all alone. Okay? You have no right to be telling me things the way they are. I'm one night, I get a call, and they said, Howie Hendricks is in town. Some of you know Howie. Howie is a teacher at Dallas Seminary for years. He's just to watch Howie teach is for me to have the opportunity to watch a master apply his craft. They said, Howie's in town doing a devotional for the PGA Tour guys, so why don't you go up? And I said, fine. I went up, and Howie's doing his thing. And he's talking along, and all of a sudden he said this, no marriage in the world can withstand a constant barrage of negativism. I've expanded that because I think he's right. No human relationship can withstand a constant barrage of negativism. If tomorrow you go to lunch and you're sitting around with 3 other people from the office and all you're doing is ripping everything, do you understand that isn't going to help you? It's not going to help you. It's not helping anything. Nobody's attracted to that. Some of you are so bitter and so sour for whatever reason. Do you realize that other people can see that? It is amazing to me because I'm up here and you can see me, but some of you act like I can't see you. That's what fascinates me. I can see all of you. I got certain things that I look for every time, every Sunday. I got certain people that I know will be in certain places, and I'll grab them just to make sure that I'm okay, and this really is 9:30, and all these different kinds of things that go with it. Paul has friends. He does 4 things. They're right here. Number 1, he prays for them. Do you see what he says? I constantly pray for you. I pray for you day and night. Here's the second thing, and it's right what you have on the screen. He writes to them. There's something about a written letter. There's something about handwriting. It's even more powerful than email. I'll tell you something about email. Here's the problem with email. It's person to person, but it's not face to face. So you'll type things on that email that you'd never write in your own hand. And you'll write in your own hand and type things on an email that you'd never say face to face. I was in a bookstore a while ago, and there's a book, a Ronald Reagan book of letters that he wrote to Nancy. And it's kind of, I'd never buy, but I would read at Borders. Here's one of the letters. He wrote this. This is why he was president. To my first lady, I love you so much more than I did 365 days ago, and so much less than I will 365 days from now. I said, whoa, 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 get some paper here, buddy. Write this baby down. I love you more. It didn't quite work for me. I wrote it, and Susan said, I don't get it. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, let me read it to you. I love you so much more than I did 365 days ago, and so much less than I will 365 days from now. Signed, Ronnie. Copied too much. I meant Tommy. That's what I meant. There's something about it, writing, okay? Here's the third thing he did. He wrote, he prayed, he visited. It's the face-to-face gig. I'm coming to see you. We're studying this 1 Corinthians. When I come, I long to be with you. Here's what he says. I long to see you again. You got to go out. It's the face-to-face part. Here's the last thing. He did something that we kind of has a negative connotation to it, but it's really positive. He networked. He said, you know what? I got so-and-so, and I'm sending him to see you. I got this Timothy, and there's no guy in the world quite like Timothy. You're going to have a magnificent year if you improve human relationships. Here's the next thing. You're going to have a great year if you increase your freedom. Paul writes this. Paul says, you were bought at a price, so don't become a slave to men. You've been freed. And then you go and enslave yourself to men. How would we do that? Well, there'd be a variety of ways. We could be enslaved to Bank of America. We could be enslaved to work, enslaved to booze or drugs. Some of you are enslaved to gossip. You just can't finish a conversation without gossip. Golf or exercise. The guys here tell me that we have a lot of guys, not just in our church, but that we deal regularly with a lot of you guys that are just constantly into the internet pornography stuff. Now, here's the problem with being enslaved to anything. When I'm enslaved to that thing, it owns me. And consequently, there'll always be an absence of joy in my life. Don't get me wrong, you are designed to be a slave. Paul said, I am Paul, a slave to the Lord Jesus Christ. As long as I'm enslaved to Him, as long as He owns me and everything about me, all my possessions are His. As long as that's in place, now I can live the life He designed me to live, and there will be joy. If I know that Jesus is my master and I'm His slave, and I'm at His beck and command, and all that I do is at His charge, as I obediently live for Him, all of a sudden there's a joy in my life. But if something else owns me, something other than Christ, my life will always be missing something. See, if He's my slave, then I understand that He first loved me. So now there's love in my life. If I love Him, Jesus said, I want to obey Him. If I want to obey Him, then I'm going to know Him. And that starts it. You want to grow spiritually? This will get the ball rolling. Fall in love with Him, and as you love Him, you want to obey Him, and as you want to obey Him, you get to know Him, and as you know Him, you love Him more. As you love Him more, you obey Him more. As you know Him more, and boom, 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 you're going to have a great year. If you break the chains of anything that bind you, don't become a slave to men. Maybe you're a slave to what other people think. Maybe your pride, or the flip side, your insecurity, whatever it is. You're so concerned about what other people think that you're held hostage to them. You're going to have a great year if you improve relationships and increase freedom. Here's the third thing. You're going to have a great year if you can intensify your passion. I want you to be a passionate people. This is by Howard Schultz. He was, for a long time, chairman and CEO of Starbucks. I think he's been promoted. I think they created a new spot for him higher than that. I don't know what that is, but a new spot. It's really an interesting book, and I kind of enjoyed it. It's a business book, but it's got a lot of just human insight into it. This is after he was working in New York. He went out to Seattle. He'd heard about Starbucks. It was just a little coffee house then, and he'd heard about it. Now he gets on the plane, and he's flying back home. Here's what he writes. On the 5-hour plane trip back to New York the next day, I couldn't stop thinking about Starbucks. It was like a shining jewel. I took one sip of the watery airline coffee and pushed it away. I reached into my briefcase. I pulled out a bag of Sumatra beans and I opened them and sniffed them. I leaned back and my mind started to wander. I believe in destiny. At that moment, flying 35,000 feet above the earth, I could feel the tug of Starbucks. There was something magic about it, a passion, an authenticity I'd never experienced. Maybe I could help it grow. What could I bring to Starbucks that could make it even better than it was? The opportunity seemed as wide open as the land I was flying over. By the time I landed at Kennedy Airport, I knew in my heart that this was it. I jumped into a taxi and went home to Sherry. Here's the last sentence of this chapter. That was the way I met Starbucks, and neither of us have been the same since. Let me help you out here. He's talking about coffee. This guy is in love with coffee. But boy, you can't, even the title, pouring your heart into it. Don't you desire? And the answer is yes, something you can pour your heart into. Something that gives you a reason to get up. Something that just lights your fire. There's a word. I don't like it. I use it periodically. I guess it has a place. I know it has a place in its right sense. The word is balance. I don't like that word balance. And that's because for many people it's become a code word for apathetic or average. Generally speaking, balanced people don't accomplish great things. If I said to you, the Apostle Paul, that's who we're talking about. If I said the Apostle Paul to you, and we'll do a word association, I could give you 1 billion words, and I can't imagine you going, Paul, balanced? In fact, he fights against that. Here's what he said, this one thing I do. Now, we know he does other things, but he's saying this thing. And this is the way balance fits in the appropriate way, I think. This one thing supersedes everything else. Here are the things in my life. Here are the priorities. When I triage my life, here's the way they shake out. And I put my emphasis on this, and then this, and then this, and then this. And I may not have any time for these other things. That's the way to live. Something that brings out in your life a passion. We live in a country that has on its coinage a motto, in God we trust. We have a national anthem. We have a national symbol, the eagle. What we need is a national color. A color that captures the heart, the spirit of Americans today. We need a color that just radiates and says when you look at it, that's America. If we did, here's what I suggest the color would be. Beige. Just like these walls, kind of bland. That's what we're about. Well, whatever. Recent poll, 47% of high school students said they could not imagine anything worth dying for. Not family, not friends, not country, not faith. If there's nothing worth dying for, you know this, then there's nothing worth living for. So all of a sudden, my life is whatever, I guess. Okay. Somebody much more astute than I am looked at our culture and said, we have become so addicted to mediocrity that we don't even sin with vigor anymore. We don't even sin good, that's how they'd say it. Here's what Paul says in Romans 9, verse 3. For I could wish that I myself were cursed and cut off from Christ for the sake of my brothers, those of my own race, the people of Israel. Paul's saying, I'd give up my faith. If it were possible, it's not. He said, I so love, I so care, I'm so passionate about this nation that I would give up my salvation that I love so much for them. There's passion. Is there passion in your life? Passion is contagious, I think. John Wesley, years and years and years and years ago, was preaching. And the common guy was coming to see Wesley. And it was driving the church guys nuts. They're trying to say, how come these guys will come out and stand in the rain outside the mines and listen to you, but they won't come into church and listen to us? And Wesley said this, here's the secret. Light yourself on fire because everybody loves to watch somebody burn. That's true. And let me give you a little encouragement because maybe naturally this isn't what you're like. Maybe you're not an animated guy. You can be a quiet, soft-spoken person and still be passionate. In fact, if you're a quiet, soft-spoken person, I don't think you ought to be. There's nothing worse than somebody saying, I really care about these things passionately. Okay, whatever. I mean, that doesn't work for me. Be you. If this word is in you, and it just saturates your body, and it saturates your mind, and you're in love with the Creator God of the universe, and if He's changed your life and you know it, you will become passionate. I'll bet I've had 15 people tell me A Beautiful Mind is a good movie. Now, I don't know if it is, it isn't. I don't know anything about it. I bet I've had 15 people say, you should go see this movie. You'd really like this movie. It's an interesting movie. Even if you don't like the movie, it's an interesting movie. You ought to go see this movie. I bet I've had 15 people say that. None of them are on staff with the company that produced the movie. None of them have any affiliation with the movie. They just saw a movie and they liked it. The most natural thing in the world was to tell me about it. They were excited about it. If that's true about a movie, how much more true should it be about a personal relationship with the Creator God of the universe, who changed your destination from hell to heaven, who changed your life that was dead and meaningless and gave it purpose and life? How much more true should that be? There should be something contagious about the way you live. I ought to be able to see it all over you. When people walk into this campus and they see those of us that are here on a regular basis, there ought to be something when their foot hits the blacktop, they say, there's something different here. I don't know what it is. Can't put my finger on it. Don't even know exactly. But there's something different. And what it is the Spirit of God living in the people of God. That makes you passionate. It makes you passionate about your work. Here's the next thing. You're going to have a great year if you expand your perspective. Paul writes this in Philippians 1. This is my prayer, that your love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. You'll be able to discern what is best, what is, and may be pure and blameless. Now, he's talking about knowledge of the Lord. You have to spend time in that Word. I was talking with a man a month or so ago. We had breakfast. And his job, he just, along with a group of I don't know how many guys, just finished doing a translation, word-for-word translation. I think it's the New Revised Standard English Standard Bible. And he was saying, it was funny, as we were doing this, we were at Cambridge, and he said we'd start every morning at 7:30, and then we'd work till 5:30 or 6 at night, immersed in the Word. And yet he said after 3 or 4 days, I just found myself empty. And he said, here's what happened. All of a sudden, this had become a very academic study, and my private time of just opening this and reading it had faded away, and consequently, I was drying up. So you have to be in this Word. Now, let me suggest something else. Expanding perspective means expanding knowledge in this changing world you're in. There are tapes out there, I don't know where they are, I don't remember when I said it, where I predicted that the computer was a fad and would never last. Now, I don't know that I'm wrong yet. The tide seems to be moving against me, but I'm not certain that it still couldn't whip back. And I said, I'm never going to have one of those. I don't need one of those. And now, our computer at home just went, and it took me about 30 seconds to call over here to say, somebody order me a computer and get a computer in. I pay for it myself, just so you know that. I'll pay for it myself, and it comes into my house. I got to have this thing here. How am I going to function? See, you can't just shut this world around you. And listen, that happens especially with older people. And the problem with older is defining it. I would say older would be anything above 52. Okay? 53 next year. Older. And I watch this. I'm with older people. And they kind of go, well, everything's happening so fast, and, I can't really keep up, and I'm just kind of obsolete. Nobody wants, we're just dumb. We don't know how to. Jay Leno talks about, this is a great story, about his dad and mom's TV broke. And so he bought him a new TV. And he went to see his dad, and they're sitting there and they're watching the TV, and he said, hey, Dad, isn't something on Channel 3 or whatever? And he said, yeah. And he got up and went over, turned it. And he came back and he said, when they shipped, and he just went on it 3 or 4 times, he said, when they shipped this, didn't they give you a... He said, oh, yeah, we got one of those, but I don't know how to use that or anything. And Leno said, I know he's afraid if he pushes something like this, it'll blow up and everything will... Well, listen, this is the way to live. There was a young man walking across this campus a while ago, about 13 years old, beaming from ear to ear. He looked like he just won the lottery. I said, what's going on? And he said, I just got an email from my grandpa. I'm telling you, this generation is dying to hear from you. You have something to bring. In our premarital class that we do, every time we say, what's the best class? You know what they say? And we do 8 or 9 of them. You know what they say? Best session. When Alan and Betty Page come in. Alan and Betty been married 53 or 4 years. They're a fascinating couple. He saw her at church. He shipped out, never talked to her, wrote her a letter and said, I think you should marry me. And they got married. They never had a date. That's a pretty neat story. We don't recommend that, by the way. That's not the part we ask you to emulate. But I mean, here this couple for 54 years he's the colonel. He's gone a lot. How do you make this work? You got so much to offer. And my observation have been is the young people want to listen to you too. All you got to do is tell it. Tyler was over last night and we were talking about different things, and he was talking about his grandpa, talking about when he was a young man. And he said, man, I just love to listen to him. That's all around you. You just need to make the effort to expand your perspective. Now, I know, here's what stops a lot of you. A lot of stuff in the world that's changing isn't good. I got that. Years ago, they interviewed John Wooden, the wizard. And they asked him about a variety of things, but one of the things they asked him about were the new uniforms, those short pants that they used to have, now kind of the long, sloppy things. And I encourage you, I'll tell you, all of you ought to watch ESPN Classics and watch an NBA game from like 30 years ago. There's no music. A guy would foul and he'd go, oh, I did that. Rather than yell and swear and hit somebody. It's a phenomenal thing they had going back then. And they asked the wizard about the shorts. And he said, well, it's certainly changed. And then he said this, I wrote it down, all progress is change, but not all change is progress. I know there's a lot of stuff that's changing, and I don't want to see it change that way, but I'll tell you what, you'll make yourself irrelevant. You aren't irrelevant, you just decide to be irrelevant. You got to be willing to step out. The other day, Milton Friedman said, I just read a book that'll change the world. Milton Friedman, 90-year-old economist. He's SMART. I've got almost no idea what he's talking about. I also know there's only one book that's going to change the world, and that's the Scripture, but I thought, I wonder what this book is. And it's by a Peruvian economist. So I made a note, and I went to the bookstore. It's called The Mystery of Capital. I went to the bookstore. I read about 10 pages. I got no clue what this guy said, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to buy this and kind of read this. You know what? After about 150, 200 pages, I started to understand what the guy was saying, and it's really a phenomenal thing, and it's something I'd never even thought about before. Isn't that amazing? You're going to have a great year if you expand your perspective. Now, here's the problem. You'll look at this list and you can be overwhelmed. You're going to have a great year if you improve relations, increase freedom, intensify your passion, expand your perspective. There ought to be something in you right now going, I can't do that. I can't do all of that. It's impossible for me to do that. That's terrific. Because what you need is to be strengthened with the Holy Spirit. Here's what Paul wrote. For this reason I kneel before the Father, from whom his whole family in heaven and on earth derives its name, and I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power. There's what you need. That's what you and I need in this life. Power. It was just a year ago that we watched the transfer of power. Bill Clinton and that administration yielded to George W. Bush, and in he comes, and all that comes with it. George Bush becomes the most powerful man in the world. The strongest military in the world is at his beck and call. He's got everybody and everything around him. He makes the call and it happens. And yet, I say this not for effect, it's absolutely true. You have more power than George W. Bush because you have the Holy Spirit living in you, and you have the power that as God works through your life to see people's hearts change. You can't call out the military and shoot down an airplane. But you can call upon the Creator God of the universe and ask Him to send His angels and His Spirit to invade the lives of people around you. First and foremost, you. Now that's real power. I can't do it. I remember I became a Christian, and I wasn't a Christian very long, and all of a sudden I thought, uh-oh, I'm hearing a lot here about giving up. Give up this, give up that, give up this, and I'm thinking, I don't know about that. What's God going to take away from me? Here's a brief list of what He took away. Guilt, remorse, depression, anxiety, loneliness, and fear. Here was the trade I made. I gave all that away, and here's what I got. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control, the ability to understand this world as it was meant to be understood, and at the end of this, I go to heaven. I don't know, not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but that was a pretty good trade, it seemed like to me. That's a pretty good exchange right there. That's not why I make that exchange. I make that exchange because I'm a sinner, and I understand my sin, and all of a sudden I understand this is the only solution for my sin. See, I think a lot of you opt out for, I can't do it too quickly. It might be that you can't come up with a plan to do it, and it might be that you don't have the resources to do it. It might be that you don't have the strength to do it, but here's something you do have. You have the power to do it. You know somebody who can get it done. It's the Spirit of God. You are going to have an extraordinary year if you will take the time to improve relationships and to increase your freedom, to intensify your passion, to expand your perspective, and to be strengthened through the Holy Spirit. I really encourage you to use this tool, to come back again and again. The notes, obviously, at this point, if not now, but soon, are on the website, to come back to this again and again and again, to take this inventory, because next year, the first 2 Sundays in January, we're going through this exact exercise, word for word, illustration for illustration, all over again. See, that's what I'm saying to you. Even in this life, if difficult times come this year and hard times come, and all of a sudden you have down times, what I'm saying to you is, in the middle of those down times, you have purpose and meaning, and there's an excitement with anticipation of what God's going to do. That's the life we live. I had somebody the other day say to me, you look like you live a very exciting life. I said, you know what? I live a very exciting life. Because I never know exactly what God's going to do. And He doesn't ask me to do anything that He isn't going to give me the strength and the power to do, and that's the same with you. Next Sunday, I had planned to get back into 1 Corinthians 14. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take one more week. I've got something I want to talk to you about, and I'm going to ask you to make certain that you're here. If you know others from the church, make certain that they are here. I just want to talk, a little fireside chat. That's what we're going to do. We're just going to have a heart-to-heart talk about just some things that I see and some things that I sense, and some warnings that I want us to heed and to listen to. So we'll talk about that next week, and then the following week we'll be into 1 Corinthians chapter 14. Father, help us live this life that brings honor and glory to You. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.